Here, there's 1, 2, 3 different layers that are pretty succinct on the left-hand side, and you can see there's a line in between those different layers. Now, each of those layers of Earth's history might be tens of billions of years, okay? So it's compressed over the course of time. Now, you'll see in a lot of places where there's a gap, right? So look at that window on the left there. There's a whole ledge, and all of a sudden there's a bunch of boulders and stuff at the bottom and nothing up top. Well, at one point in time, that was probably an arch, all right? And you'll see that in a few different places. There's the 3 gossips up there. You have to use your imagination, but it looks like 3 people staring over towards the courthouse towers, which is what's over here on the right-hand side of us. So right there, those are the 3 gossips. And at one point in time, there was probably an arch connecting in between those. So how did those arches collapse, or how did those arches form? For those of you who are visual learners, and certainly not expecting you to look at it right now on your map, but on your map it should have a nice kind of listing or a nice photo. That's how I learn best. And it tells you how the formations happen. So we can see those clear lines in different places, and over the course of time, things start eroding bit by bit by bit. Here, and see the huge window right there, and there actually is a little arch there to the left. Don't worry, we're going to see a whole bunch more shortly. But about 300 million years ago is when this area here was underwater, okay? And so salt deposits, just like the Great Salt Lake is collecting salt and everything right now, the saline content's very high. Imagine that covering all of this area. It's a huge inland sea. As that salt was deposited over the course of time, it built up on itself, and then it started to compress, all right? And it started to get harder and solidified. Then other times of Earth's history happened and got put on top of that salt. So there were layers upon that layer cake that were added on. As that happened, the salt became even more and more compressed. And the salt's also mixed with calcium carbonate too as well. If you've been to places like Mammoth Hot Springs up in Yellowstone, that's where you see a lot of that. So as that all is solidifying, and it's getting, imagine, pushed down layer upon layer of Earth's history is getting put on top of it. It's becoming even more compressed. This is not a river, but one of the few. It's called a wash. A wash is if you get a lot of rain or snowfall, the water will rush to the lowest point in elevation here, and that's what that is right there. So it becomes compressed. But eventually here, the Colorado Plateau, right, was uplifted and started exposing all of those layers. The sandstone layers on top of the salt layer started eroding away, and that, again, salt became known as the entrada sandstone layer, is what geologists call it, started becoming exposed. And it erodes away very easily, much quicker than the Navajo sandstone, which is what you're looking at here on the right, those, again, windswept type sand dunes, right? It erodes away much easier and much quicker than that. And so what happens is, as the fault line here and things are moving, as things are getting exposed and eroding, it starts breaking and cracking in places, and eventually it'll become what are called fins, right? So at one point in time, this would have been a whole solid layer, but over here on the left, we've got a fin. So it's a kind of a narrow section. If you were flying overhead, it'd be really obvious. It looked like long fingers with areas in between, like what we're in right now. As that happens, those fins eventually start also deteriorating. So wind and water attacks those fins. Very similar to Bryce Canyon. It's not the same type of stone, but similar to Bryce Canyon, right? Over the course of time, that starts eroding away. By the way, is the microphone too loud? You said it was.
Yes, it is.
It's too loud? We'll turn it down.
No.
Is that better?
Yeah, I have to have earplugs on. Turn it back down. It's a little soft for the back with the motor.
How about this? Is that too much?
That's fine.
It's okay?
Better, thank you.
All right. You can always see me aside too if you got individual. Yeah, I don't want to be shouting. If you have to put, I don't have to have anyone put ear